Good morning, everyone. How are you today? Welcome to day two. I hope you enjoyed yesterday. It was a great day. Shout out to the mission control at the number. Things really ran really smoothly yesterday. I was much calmer last night than I was the night before. So and fresh, invigorated, and ready to rock and roll today. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the diversity and inclusivity workshop. I thought that was excellent. And then all the learning how to tell your story and how to maximize your impact on social media was in the afternoon. We've got another great day today. We are starting, starting this morning with a keynote speaker, Ian Tostenson from the BC Restaurant and Food Association, a guy that I've spent a lot of time working with since BTAP, and he's really done a great job, and looking forward to his perspective on how the hospitality industry and particularly the restaurant industry is surviving. We are also going to move into finance this morning, which is obviously one of the key drivers of our business, particularly with COVID. We have MNP with a talk on facing disruption in the craft brewing industry. How resilient is your business? Well, that's timely. As you know from some emails we've been sending and some members who have gone through some audits and with the liquor board, we are also spending a lot of time advocating for that. And we've got Christian Wee from CSL to talk at, he's going to talk at 11 o'clock. And then finishing out the morning is our friends from RBC and BDC, and they're doing the pursuit of financial happiness, looking ahead. So a great day today. It is my pleasure to introduce Matt Arruda from CapriCMW, who you met by video there, but we're going to bring him on to introduce Ian. Matt, over to you.
Thanks, Ken. I won't ramble on too long because I think the video kind of gave you most of what you needed from that perspective, but just wanted to say we're super happy to continue to be involved with the BC Craft Brewers Guild and a proud sponsor. Hopefully the next go around for this conference, we'll do it all in the flesh and be able to have a beer and enjoy ourselves a little bit more with regular clothes and not just in pajamas. As you're well aware, obviously the hospitality industry has been hit very hard by COVID the last 12 months. Ian Tostenson, President and CEO of the BC Restaurant and Foodservices Association, will take us through a bit of the behind the scenes journey on how the industry pulled together during this challenging time. Ian will also take us through what the future holds for the industry in 2021 and forward.
All right, I think we are live. Is that true? All right. Good morning, everyone. Ian Tostenson. Thank you for the introduction, Matt. I appreciate that very much. Today, I want to sort of talk about in sort of three areas, and it sort of goes in sort of sequence. Number one would be, how do we get to where we are today, and what did we learn at the very beginning of this tragedy for our industry? I also want to sort of say, or I want to tell you that when I say restaurants, I mean breweries as well too. And when I look through the ale trail, I mean most breweries have food. And so for the purposes of today, let's just assume that breweries are restaurants that make beer because you do it so well. And then finally, I want to talk about some ideas that you might find interesting in terms of what the research is saying in terms of the future, which is based on what we know from our experience over the last 10 months, and how the consumers have shifted and how we need to, as an industry, well, I hate to use the word pivot, but let's just say change, be enthusiastic, embrace this, because the future is going to look a lot different than it did before what was our normal past in the past. So I guess the story starts, just, for those that don't know, I spent a fair number of years in my career with Cascadia Brands, heading up Cascadia Brands, and we operated Kelowna Wines, Granville Island Brewing, Potter's Distilling. We started Brewing Owl Vineyards, and we had an import company. So, and then the company was sold. I was there for 22 years. The company was sold in 2006. Peller actually bought the company because we were a public company that went private, and then our private major shareholder out of Europe went bankrupt. That's what happened there. But I learned a lot, and I think the one event in my life that I learned a lot through that whole thing. But we had an unexpected event one day where we were in the middle of collective bargaining, and suddenly we woke up on a Monday morning, and the union was standing outside with picket signs outside the winery, and that just shut down everything. So this is a facility in the Okanagan that was producing somewhere about 3 million cases annually between beer, because we had moved Granville Island up to Kelowna and produced out of that facility, and then also the commercial wine business. And so it was significant to us. I mean, it was significant from a cash flow point of view, et cetera, et cetera. So with that in mind, I learned a whole bunch of things, and I was taught a whole bunch of things, what to do in terms of a crisis. So when we go into last year, I remember someone saying to me in my office, restaurants in Richmond are starting to shut down. This was like end of January, beginning of February. And my answer was, yeah, well, that's understandable, because, they're probably on WhatsApp and hearing all this information from China, and they're worried. So they just want to sort of stay home and stay away from what could be, a problem. Not even thinking for a minute this was going to be an issue for us. Then in March, we saw a couple of things. St. Patrick's Day got shut down in the city of Vancouver, and then eventually we had a shutdown of the entire industry, completely shuttered. And I remember going to Victoria, and we were going to do a seminar on, frankly, quite basically how to wash your hands and cleanliness in public facilities. And the Vancouver Sun grabbed me for an article, and I remember saying something like, "It's fine, it's all good. Restaurants are safe. You can go to a restaurant." And I literally got hate mail from people and harassed from people saying that I was irresponsible and blah, blah, blah. So I became kind of aware that we have to for the future, we have to be very careful about what we say and how we portray it, because it's a very sensitive public. And I talked about the media in a bit, and it continues to be very sensitive. So there we were in March with the shutdown. And my natural instinct was a couple of things. Number one is, we're going to need a whole bunch of great minds around the table here to figure this out. There was no playbook anywhere that existed in the world on how to reopen after a pandemic, or even deal with a pandemic. There were some restaurant groups in the States and larger ones in Canada that had done some thinking about it, but we frankly didn't have any information. So the first thing we decided to do is take action, and then we sort of thought, you know what, we need guys like Ken, and we need the craft brewers, and we need the BC Wine Institute, and we need Able BC. And at times we work with Restaurants Canada, but the initial thought was, we need to pull together here as organizations that are rested in British Columbia, and have their entire business model is based on the success or failure of British Columbia. And we put that together. Like literally within minutes, a few phone calls, and that group then met every day to try to figure this out. So we all had different perspectives, different strengths, different ideas about what could happen. But in the meantime, somewhere in the story, Dr. Henry had said, I wonder what it would look like. I wonder what the restaurant industry and brewing industry, I wonder how they want to reopen their industry. I wonder what their thoughts are. And we took that as the major challenge. And so we put together in 9 days a working group of 70 people. Some on this call today are on that committee. They are the experts and experienced people all throughout British Columbia. And we put together this, and we said, look, our challenge is, Dr. Henry wants us to write an opening plan. And so we had parsed together and talked and put together some information. We got it out to the group, and in 9 days, the industry, and I say all of us, because the reopening affected breweries, pubs, bars, restaurants, put together a plan that went to Dr. Henry, the Premier, on how we want to do this. And in fact, that plan was a lot stricter than some of the resulting protocols that came out of that are existing right now with WorkSafe. But the nevertheless is that we were the first industry, and all of us should be really proud of this. All of us should be proud because, right from the input that we got from every sector, this was well received. And then what happened was the premier, Dr. Henry, and this is really key, I think, to our future. They started to message publicly that the restaurant/hospitality industry has put together a plan. And then this was an example of how other industries should do it. I remember actually, if you remember back, you couldn't get a haircut, and I needed a haircut, and I just randomly phoned the guy that looks after salons for Western Canada. I don't know what his name is, Doug or something. I say, hey, Doug. He goes, yeah. I said, have you got a plan? Have you put a safety plan? And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, well, we just did, and it's going over really well, and you should too. And he said, why are you calling me? I said, because I think all of us would like to see you guys open sooner than later, so we all get haircuts. But that's not going to happen until you decide to put in a plan, because you can't leave it to Dr. Henry or the premier or anybody else in Victoria to figure out how we should open. We are the experts of that. And so to everyone on this call, thank you for all your input and all your emotion that went into that. We developed a plan, and we were able to open our industry. And today, despite all the problems that we're in right now, we should be very proud collectively that we're one of the only provinces that continues to offer in brewery, in restaurant dining experiences, albeit it's a tough road, I get that. But that was the result of that. That was the result of the discipline. So we saw, the first thing we learned was, and I want to take my hats off to Ken, because I didn't realize he was my neighbor until one day we were out walking. I really take my hats off to people like Ken that just stepped up and said, you know what, we're in the unknown here right now, but they just put in all their experience to the table here, and we created a synergy within industry that's powerful. That was powerful and will continue to be really powerful for the time to come. We, I still need a haircut. Thanks, Don. Don goes, I still need a haircut. All right. Yeah, you're right. But where was I? So what we found is that the voice of British Columbia organizations representing, the stakeholders, as I said, ABLE, the Wine Institute, craft beer, and restaurants, was very, very important. So we wrote a couple of things we did. We wrote a letter to the premier, and this was the wrong thing to do. We actually, we didn't know though, when we asked for all these fees to be deferred, what we should have asked is, we'll never be able to pay them. So, but we looked at, PST, and we looked at employers' health tax, property tax, all the different things to try to get your cash flows so they wouldn't be drained. As I said earlier, we met every day to discuss strategy every single morning, particularly Ken and I and Jeff from ABLE. We would talk it through, set a plan, and then we started to do something that we'd never done before, because all these organizations were like, hey, you should join the BCRFA because we're better than ABLE, or ABLE's, doesn't do breweries, or all that kind of nonsense. It's all gone now. We realize that all of us can bring something to the table on your behalf to make it stronger. So we started to expand our communication and have sort of same messages, because there's so much commonality between, brewers and pubs and bars and restaurants. Not so much bars. Bars is a little harder issue for us, but nevertheless, industry was getting consistent information, was getting daily information. We were working hard behind the scenes, like breaking news, CNN all the time. And one of the things that we did as an organization to prove our point here is we declared ourselves open 24/7. So we changed our Facebook credentials to say not open 5 days a week, but open 24/7. And we meant that because it was that one person that phoned one day, and he was in tears from the Okanagan. And he said he was so scared about the future. We all were scared about the future. And he said this, and this drove and continues to drive me today and the staff at BCRFA. He said, I'm not worried about me, I'm worried about my staff. I don't know what to do with my staff. I don't know if they're going to be protected. I don't know if they're going to have wages, but I can't pay them. That was his concern. It wasn't his lease payment, his business, his lifelong savings. It was his staff. And he was in tears, and I got off. I said, you know what, if we need to do everything that we possibly can. And so we've said this to the group, and I've said it to our staff. It's a privilege to be able to be involved in this at the level that we are. And if it honestly, if you can't look back in 2 or 3 years and say, I made a real difference for my industry to get them back on their feet again, we need to have that as an outcome. It's not just shuffling paper now. This is really serious, because if this industry goes down, thousands of people go down. So we've got a $15 billion industry with 14,000 licensed and unlicensed outlets, and then breweries are included in that, with 190,000 people. And suddenly overnight, when we got shuttered, half those people were gone. If not, I think there was more than 100,000. I think we got down to probably a core crew of 30,000, which are essentially people working in kitchens. All the rest of the staff were gone. The good thing is, and we didn't have a lot to do with federal programs, because that's not sort of where we go. I mean, Restaurants Canada, those guys, they do a good job at the federal level. But at least we had a couple of things going in our favor. They had CERB, which took care of employees, and then they brought in the wage subsidy program. It went through different iterations, but I know today a lot of businesses are really benefiting from that. And then eventually, there came the rent program. So that's sort of the history there. So we wrote letters to Premier. We met every day. We expanded our communication. We shared our communication. We found common interests, and we found that there was very little differences between these organizations in terms of issues. We found the common interests. And the other realization that we saw, and we took it for granted, and I remember being in the wine industry, and we won some awards at some point, and someone said, and I think it was in London or something, and someone said, sometimes you have to leave home to get the recognition you deserve. And I sort of thought, when I thought about this, the realization was it took this crisis for us to realize a couple of things that we took for granted. Number one is this industry is irreplaceable. It cannot be replaced by anything except for the hospitality and the food and the beer and all the things that we bring. It's irreplaceable. And so for a whole bunch of reasons, for its economic impact, its employment impact in the economy, but more importantly now, as you can well see, our mental health. I mean, there's nothing else going on besides breweries and restaurants essentially to go out and entertain ourselves. So we've done everything in our power to try to keep that experience available to our consumers. It became quite evident that we create neighborhoods, and I think in the context of breweries, breweries create neighborhoods. I mean, one of the restaurant groups that sort of started this trend a little bit was Browns. As you notice, that Browns tend to be clustered into neighborhoods and or around clusters in neighborhoods and create neighborhoods. But essentially, a lot of us, what we do here is like the old church model in the community where y'all went to the church to see your friends. Now you can go to your favorite craft brewery and experiencing not just a social event, but great beers and great food and great pairings and all those things. And what's important to us, and I say us as industry here, is that we keep this thing, our ability to continue to do this, because it's the last thing that people really have right now to hang on to. There's no concerts, there's sporting events, all that kind of stuff. It's up to us to deliver that. So that's important. I think it drove home the importance of local, much more so. We took that for granted, and that's going to take on even a stronger presence. Is we assume that local is important, but we know local is important. So how many times have you heard now, support your local business, support your, the business in your neighborhood, buy local, understand, which we don't understand very well as a community, what's in season, what's not in season. So there's a lot of education stuff to do. And then we also, looked at, we just assume tourism is going to be forever. When you take out a $7 or $8 billion chunk of the industry in tourism and all those, millions of people that would come visit breweries, go to restaurants, you go downtown Vancouver right now or Victoria, see they're kind of ghost towns without tourists. We took that for granted. So how important is tourism? Really important. How important is employment? Really important. I think that's why the Premier was so keen, and he's made a few phone calls to say, you know what, we're here to help this industry get back on, because if you look at our the sort of demographics of our industry here, you're looking at an industry that's 25% of it we employ between the ages of 15 and 24, and a lot of those are women. and more, and I'll talk about diversity, but more and more, you know, you're catching more of a diverse employment pool as well too. So really critical to the economy, to students and all that, you know, all that part-time stuff, to single moms at home that needing some hours. So that's very small. And then of course, the agricultural impact when we saw some of the issues that were developing in the wine industry, when there was not the licensed premises to sell draft beer to, and or VQA wine to. Ken Beatty asked questions, yeah. And that became really evident for the suppliers, and that backed up the chain in terms of the supply. So these are all things that we always talked about, but we never did. So the result of this over the last little while, the collective result, and I remember the first thing that happened was a phone call that Ken was on, I was on, and Jeff was on. We were left with delivery. A lot of people had not digitized their business, and we're not prepared for the digital revolution to sort of handle takeout and delivery, but nevertheless, we are where we are today. But one of the first things we identified was, how can we increase the ability for sales? And so I remember on a Thursday, Ken and I and Jeff made a call to the licensing branch in Victoria, and by Sunday, it had gone up the flag and down the flag pole and back to us, and the government had approved the sale of alcohol with takeout and delivery. And I want to just keep that in mind, because there's that segment is not going away, that opportunity is not going away. But we sort of went, wow, that would take years in another world to get that. And we saw the government, and we realized that they were just as worried and scared about everything as we were. They didn't have any ideas. They were relying on industry. I don't want to call us experts, but let's just call us experts. Our expertise comes from you. And it's pretty hard for them to say to us, we need this for the benefit industry. We don't, and Ken doesn't do this either. We don't lobby. Some guys do. We don't lobby. We present the business case to government. We present the opportunity to how we can pair together and create wins. Whether it's an NDP government or Liberal government, doesn't make any difference. They're the government. We respect that. And I got to say, this government's been very responsive in a lot of ways to just about everything we brought to them. The next thing we did was we wrote a co-letter to every municipality in British Columbia, saying that we need to follow the Dr. Henry advice about being outside. So we need a patio expansion, we need patio approvals, and we need them, you know, for a period of time to create to get rid of the uncertainty that you guys are faced with. And that happened. It's not perfect, but it did happen. We've got a long ways to go when it comes even to like the structural approvals, those sort of things. There's still some hangups in the system, but the fact is that we were able to argue appropriately that Dr. Henry wants us outside, and number one, and number two is that we were under physical restrictions, still are, right? And you guys have spent a lot of money on plexiglass and doing all the things you've done, but the patio side allowed us to spread that capacity out. It's critically important. It's going to be critically important again this year. And what we saw from some Zagat research I saw in the States, patios for your businesses will continue to be, and so in the future, I mean, don't think for a minute that we're going back to where we came from. The whole world has changed now as you're going to see a trend, and we'll talk about the future here, but you're always going to see that people wanting a little bit of distance, outside spaces. You're seeing businesses taking over grassy knolls, sidewalks, and very creative. So we will continue to find that creativity, and I might add, permanency, I think, is important. We've said this to government, is that these guys are trying to make a whole bunch of decisions. You know, how much money should I invest in a patio this spring if you're just going to tell me to take it down or whatever? Or I put a patio up and everybody freezes because I can't properly enclose it because, you know, someone at City Hall has some other ideas about the structures. But we're working on that, and but it's going to be here, I think, as one of those things for the future. Wholesale liquor pricing. So Ken, you can see I have a lot of time for Ken. He's a member of the BTAP committee. BTAP's been was going through this process a couple of years ago, or maybe more. We put together a report nothing was really happening, and nothing was really happening, nothing was really happening. But it took this pandemic to get some things to happen. And one of the things that really helped our sector, at least anyways, was wholesale pricing. I remember being in the wine industry, and we were talking about wholesale pricing then. That was years ago, and it was like, no, it's a revenue issue, and so wholesale pricing is here, and wholesale pricing will stay. It might be changed a little bit, but it's going to stay, and so will the sale of alcohol. One of the things that BTAP has said is we want the things that were brought in because of the pandemic to stay. So we want to be able to continue to sell alcohol with takeout and delivery, and we need to continue on wholesale pricing. And you know what? That will happen. I mean, they have to go through their process, but I'm 100% sure it's going to happen. The next one we saw, and this really drove me crazy, because you remember the whole story we had in BC about ride sharing. We had success in ride sharing. We got ride sharing, and I developed a bit of a relationship, particularly with the guys at Uber. I mean, they had a huge benefit in the old economy. Suddenly, now ride sharing was here. It was good for our industry. You could get rides for your customers or your guests in your breweries and send them home and safe. Then the pandemic happened before ride sharing really took effect. But what these guys are doing is you're now shuttered. You're now down to takeout and delivery. You may not have been prepared from a digital point of view to deal with it, but you dealt with it. And so the whole takeout thing was, and you suddenly get your bill and you're getting commission rates of 30% from Skip the Dishes, DoorDash, and Uber Eats. And that's not sustainable. And so during some, looking at what's happening in the States, suddenly I saw this. I mean, this was, and I remember calling Ken. I said, Ken, let me tell you this story. He goes, oh my God. He goes, New York City, San Francisco, Chicago, Los Angeles all had local ordinances. They brought in regulations against these companies that said, you're taking advantage of our hospitality industry by charging 30%. Half these restaurants aren't at capacity. They're relying on takeout and delivery as a stream of revenue, as keeping employment for at least the kitchen staff, and you're jamming it to them at 30%. So we went to the government. It was Minister Mongell in the Ministry of Small Business at the time, and put together an idea and said, can the government cap the fees? And I also took it to the City Hall in Vancouver. The mayor was kind of, yeah, we got to do this, although he didn't really have the power. It had to rest the provincial government. It came back that they couldn't find regulation or a way to regulate delivery fees. So that was that. So we found out that nothing was going to happen, but the election brought capped delivery fees, and they're now down to 15%. You read last night that Skip the Dishes have now added $1, which I think is just tone deaf on their part. It's not in the spirit of our industry. I'm disappointed at Uber because they didn't come to the table and support our industry. But those three companies, which are necessary to, and I get that, but it astounds me that their biggest customer, us, they treat us the way they do. So anyway, that is that. We talked about the federal programs. The recovery grant is something that you should take a look at. I'm sure Ken is giving you the information. But as you look at some of the things you need to invest in your business up to $30,000, you can probably make a real impact from a digital point of view and your whole digital footprint, which I'll talk to in a few minutes. I want to talk a little bit about the situation at New Year's Eve and the situation at Super Bowl. So we are having conversations on a bi-weekly basis or twice a month, pardon me, with Dr. Henry's office. The New Year's Eve thing was terrible, but it was designed. I mean, basically, we have to understand here. Dr. Henry would like us all just to stay home. That's where her perfect world is. She's in health, and the Premier's trying to balance this. So what she did to the industry on New Year's was terribly unexpected, and it got results that she wanted, maybe. But we have put together a series of calendar items for the government to consider, things like Super Bowl, St. Patrick's Day, Valentine's Day, and let's start to contemplate this. I think we're able to mute any negative effects by the government on Super Bowl Sunday, although they're saying stay home. But frankly, you can go out, and you can also go out. And we're not advocating this publicly, but it's only a recommendation by Dr. Henry as to who you can go out with. And there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace. She'll say, go with your household, and we will say that publicly. But the reality is, there's no health order that says that. The strong recommendation is you do that, but people can actually come to your place and be with someone that's not in their direct household. But the spirit of what we're trying to do as an industry, and our responsibility as an industry, is we just get a little bit more time to get through this. So we may have to take a few hits along the way to make sure that it's important that we're always aligned with government. There's no reason to go out and talk against them or criticize them in the public. It just becomes entertainment for somebody sitting home listening to radio. We need to align as much as we can at all times with the government. And you know what? The more we do that, the more success we have. So I want to jump into media has been an important part of this. I think that there's been, I think we've been called on over 400 times in the last 10 months to be in media, and we've used the media to tell our story in a very honest and open way, no spin. Like I just said, if we need to sort of say things like, yeah, okay, go to a place with your family, we'll say that. It'd be easy to say, no, you can go with whoever you want. But we're because the public is super sensitive, but they don't want spin. They want honesty, and they want to know that we're vulnerable, that we care about them, that they are our lifeblood. And we have got consumer confidence in what we do as a hospitality. I would argue probably the strongest in North America, because of the way that business has conducted itself with plexiglass and the standards and all the things that you've done and invested in at considerable cost. That's going to serve us well when we get back to some different level. Okay, really quickly, we're going to see more opportunities on co-marketing. Right on for you guys with Ale Trail. I've never really spent any time with Ale Trail, but I looked around. I went, well, that is like something that anybody could take a page out of. That is a tremendous resource. Hats off to you. And that's something that we should be more involved in. I mean, we can get people to restaurants and go to breweries, or breweries and go to restaurants, or all those sort of the sort of things we can do to create synergy. That would be awesome. I could see a lot of synergy between VQA wines and craft beer. We did that when we had Granville Island and Kelowna wines. We had VQA. We would do end-all displays of VQA wines and craft beer, because the consumer is like, we would say, he'll drink a craft beer and she will drink VQA wine. Isn't that awesome? And so there's all those synergies that we need to pull together here. We are going to do something with coming up with Eat Drink Local, which is a program that we have with the government, which will make sure that that craft beer and Ken and what he's doing is front and center, because that's really important. But we just can't be doing single things like, we're going to do wine over here and beer over here and restaurants over here. This is about regenerating the economy and taking all the stuff that we do so well in brewing and making wine in particular, and putting out there. In terms of marketing, the QR code is becoming a big thing. I've said this, Ken, even though we were with Granville Island, beer flavors always confuse me, but QR codes now are a great way. I saw this at a restaurant recently where you could take a QR code and their beer would pop up. You get all the characteristics of the beer and all the explanation about what it tastes like, what the flavor profile is, perhaps what the food pairing might be. So technology is going to play a really important part to get incremental sales. And as my dear wife Kathy told me this morning, who's a VP of White Spot, I said, what's your advice? She said, tell everybody, don't assume that the guest knows as much as you do about your product. Don't assume that, because we probably don't. And there's these teachable moments like Ale Trail does, or I heard about a brewery that's doing a course now, a 5-week course for a large group of licensees in the province to train them on craft beer, which I think is great. So it's one of those opportunities, how to engage your customer. I could see a lot of breweries and businesses on here doing the same thing, is bringing what you do into people's homes. And that is, I think is a 5-hour course over 5 weeks. Is kind of cool. So here we go. The future. I know we're probably getting down to some time crunches here, but collaboration is going to be the key to everything. So the BTAP, the intersection of us with the guild, with ABLE. There's no sense in having wandering voices, and none of us are, you know, I mean, we have individual. I know Ken's dealing with some manufacturing issues at BTAP, and he's getting through those, and we'll support him on that. But basically, everybody's aligned here because it's in our best interest to get this, you know, this sector back again. Issues on licensing are common. That's going to be a real big one. So, you know, the approvals, the cost of approvals, all the things around the financial side of government, which would be property taxes, applications, approvals, all that stuff we have to use. We've proven that there's an opportunity here to streamline this stuff, and we can't let, and we won't let government go back to, well, because we're really careful here. Like, we have to raise our prices likely to pay for the things that have happened to us. Government's going to want to do the same thing too. They got to go really easy on this. And I think one of the other realizations that we've seen by government is that they realize how terribly brittle this industry is, how terribly unprofitable this industry was even going into this pandemic. The second thing is, for the future, is going to be health and safety. So transparency, single-use menus, tables having signs saying we've been sanitized, having hand sanitized, that's not going away. Family style eating is probably going to be replaced by single serve stuff. So just because we get vaccinated and maybe this is behind us, people are still going to want that as the #1 issue according to research, health and safety. We have a confidence app, but and basically you put a sticker on your building saying that this business is COVID ready. I think that's got a lot of application in the future in terms of consumer confidence. If you probably have been faced with what they call the rapid digital expansion, so online, mobile, loyalty programs, they all prove one thing, is that they give you the opportunity to engage and keep your client, customer, your guest. And so, and as you do that, you're moving to more frictionless type transactions, whether by payment, through tablets, you know.
Hey, everybody. I think we may have just lost Ian, so we're going to try to get him back. Give me a second. We do have some question. So we're going to try to figure out what happened there. We do have questions, though. That's for sure. Oh, Ian, you might have to unmute.
There we go.
There you go. Sorry.
I'm not sure we got to. I've just
we got a number of questions. So we'd like to, if you don't mind, we'd like to ask them.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. This is from Nina. I'm in Victoria. I've heard of a couple of cases where local law enforcement has the capacity to go into a restaurant, check identification, and hand out fines if a party doesn't all live in the same household as per their IDs. Is that true?
Not true. There's nothing in the regulations that allows anybody to do that. There's a lot of rumors about that, but no. Let me give an example of why that doesn't work. If you live by yourself, you can go to Ken's pub with 2 of your friends. So suddenly now you have 3 people with different addresses. So it doesn't work the way it's been, where the suggestions are. That's not true. It is being recommended that you should go with your household, but it's not true.
Okay, and we have, are you hopeful that the government will continue to work alongside us in post-COVID world as they've done throughout?
I think even more so now. I know that, I know how they view BTAP. And I know how, you know, we're getting more calls from this government about when they design programs and trying to get some suggestions on how to make it better. I think for sure it would be really weird for the government to sort of go back to their old ways. I think they can't afford to do this. In our case, there's too much at stake here. There's too much unemployment.
And this is a good segue, though. You have touched on it, but because people kind of pulse in and pulse out, could you please just, what are the feelings on extended patios for breweries, restaurants post-COVID? Will this be allowed to continue after, or is there a sentiment or a feeling that the government will revert back to how things were once it's normal again?
If you look at the future is going to continue to be space tables, touchless points in dining, in breweries, and outside. So there's no reason for the government to suddenly say, you know what, we're bored of the patio thing right now. We're going to go back to our old ways. We need to expand that. We need to look at much more utilization of public areas for the benefit of business and to keep people safe. I mean, this safe thing is going to go on for years. It's not going to end in September when we're all vaccinated. People are now trained to keep a bit of a distance. You'll probably still see masks in restaurants and breweries for a while, for maybe for another year. We never know.
Yeah, it seems interesting to me, and we've talked about this, how other cultures wear masks, and we used to look at them as, some of us would look at them thinking, what is that person doing wearing a mask? But it's out of respect of, if you're not feeling well, they wear a mask so they don't get everyone else sick. If you don't feel good, don't go to work. How many times have we sat beside the person coughing and spitting, and you're like, what are you doing here?
I know.
So I think this will be a change, a systematic change too. There is another question about how do you feel about expanded drinking in public spaces or parks, like in Port Coquitlam?
Yeah, so that's interesting. The mayor of West Vancouver, we did a thing, and she said, "Oh, we want to, like North Vancouver, we want to expand our outdoor drinking opportunities." So I talked to a licensing branch, and I didn't like this answer, but here's the answer we have to work through. They said, "We've got so much on our plate right now. Approving municipalities to expand drinking in public areas is not a priority right now because we've got all these other things ahead of that." I don't think that's the right answer. I think that's like, well, then go hire some more people. So we're gonna have to work through that. That answer just came yesterday, as a matter of fact, because West Vancouver wants to do it, Port Coquitlam wants to do it. So I think that's important, and I think I'd like to see what West Van want to do is take actual businesses and be able to say, you know what, you can take your business and put it in the beach for a couple of weeks. Isn't that a great idea to help you expand? So we're going to work on that. But right now we're seeing the government's feeling a little bit sort of overwhelmed on all the issues it has to deal with.
And we've got Ryan from Nelson Brewing. So thanks, Ryan, for joining us. He's concerned, obviously, they're close to the Alberta border, and he's got a question on, are there signs or talks that the changing of the season will open up interprovincial travel again, or is it dependent on VAC rollout?
Okay, so I think
they're not encouraging travel, but they're not stopping it. There was a talk, I think Premier Horgan had tried that, and it was deemed by the lawyers that they couldn't do that. They wouldn't be able to do that.
So what we've been told by Dr. Henry in the background is that they're very concerned about the variants. And one of the things that we want to change right now, one of the priorities is a definition of who can eat, like the verbal definition of it's okay to go with remember the safe sex we had before we had this whole thing about households. So we're trying to get them to do that. They're reluctant to do that because they're really worried about the variants. So they said to us, if we make them a mistake here and this thing takes hold, because they're not happy. I know yesterday was at 417 cases or whatever the number was, but it was in the 400s. That's too high for her. So until those go down, she's not prepared to talk about opening it right up, to interprovincial travel or even travel within British Columbia. So I think my prediction is we're probably going to be into the spring before we see anything that truly makes a difference from the restrictions we're under right now.
Yeah, I think the next order is February 8th, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see there. And we've got just time for 2 more questions. If we can have drinking in parks and beaches, oh, this sounds entrepreneurial. Can we then proceed with beer vending carts in the future?
Why not? Let's try it.
Let's you and I try it.
Try it. Why not?
Sorry, Eric, thanks for the idea. We'll steal that.
Well, the point on this one is, and I really encourage, there's no rules in this now. You be as innovative as you want, be as in-home as you want. do your beer kits, your meal kits, all that kind of stuff for online takeout and delivery. Reach out to your guests in their home. So when you talk about beer vending machines, it may sound stupid, but a lot of stuff we're doing now sounded stupid and actually work. So that's a good idea.
Yeah, and I think you might have answered this, but I know the answer. What is the future of restaurants being able to offer beer and wine to go? So with
the answer is forever.
the
You can't, because takeout and delivery, what I was going to say is going to be, in some cases in the States, it's 80% of people's business right now. In BC, it's up to 50% of that. That's not going away. We like to order the food the way we want it into our homes with our beer, with our wine, order it, watch Netflix. That's not going away. It's going to maybe not be so intense, but it's not going away. So the government can't go, you know what, now it's April 1st or April 30th. We don't want you to do it anymore. Too bad. We've been very responsible in how we've done it. And so their indication is that's going to continue to go forward.
Well, in the interest of time, Sherry Lee, I see that you've asked a question regarding the qualifying for federal programs. I'm hoping you're sticking around for the morning, because I think that question would be better answered either by NMP or in particular RBC and BDC, if you don't mind. If they don't bring that up, I'm going to ask that question, or we'll make sure that answer, but hopefully you're going to stick around the morning and you can get that there. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I'm going to say, Ken, and one of the things we can help with, anybody in the call, Samantha in our place has done a lot of work with governments and trying to get through some support programs for businesses that haven't necessarily qualified. So if we can help that way, let us know.
Great. Well, Ian, I want to thank you very much for your time. That was excellent. We really do appreciate it. And we'll see you in the neighborhood.
Yeah, we sure will. Thank you, everyone.